Welcome, strangers, to Talkumentary, a show where we watch documentaries and then get together and talk about them. The most important thing is to remember that you're always safe.
Whatever comes up, whatever happens when you begin this journey, you allow it. You don't have to like it, you just say, okay, rather than trying to run away from it.
It's just about experiencing whatever comes up as it takes effect. In the intense part of this journey, the world that matters most to you will stop being the focus. The journey will take you to a place of infinite space.
Just being there, you will experience positive mood, open-heartedness, love, transcendence of time and space.
You might be thinking, is this safe? Will I come out of this at least as strong as I was when I walked into this situation?
To that we say, do you think we would disrespect our own handiwork?
Become more comfortable with living. Don't be afraid of dying.
You are now connected to all of the atoms of the universe.
Welcome to Talkumentary.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to another groovy episode of Talkumentary, where we're all amped up on psilocybin and we've climbed to the top of the ethereal tree and we're watching the storm clouds roll in while we guide ourselves into the amazing world of fungus. My name's Jeff. I'm your host today. Once again, I am joined by the lovely, the talented, the woman with impeccable taste in men, my wife, Niki, aka Bird. Hi, Bird.
Hi, fun guy.
Yeah. We got married earlier this month, and full disclosure, we're actually not married yet at the time of this recording, but by the time it releases, we will be. So, we get to kind of travel forward in time and pretend like we're married here for a little bit. Listeners, Bird, the cat on your lap, we have a couple very special guests with us today, don't we, Bird?
We sure do. The one and only.
The two and only.
The two and only.
We're here today to talk about the fantastic world of fungi with a couple of fun guys. Niki's brothers, my brothers-in-law, Brent and Andrew Lundin. Hello, sirs.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for being here, Brent. Welcome to Omaha again and the Talkumentary Den.
Oh, yeah, we're totally happy to be back.
Good. And you're probably going to be really happy to go back to Florida again shortly,
it's
right?
warm.
Yeah, it's still warm here today, but well, maybe not to you. Brent lives in Florida, so anytime you hear the episode that says Florida Man, that's who we're talking about here. Yep.
That's me.
Andrew, what's up, man?
What's going on?
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, man.
Long-time listener, full-time,
Absolutely.
first-time caller. So let's talk about what we watched with these fun guys. We all met up this evening to discuss a highly informative and visually, I guess, breathtaking 80-minute documentary released in 2019 called Fantastic Fungi.
My mission is to discover the language of nature, and I believe nature is intelligent.
There is a world under the earth, full of magic and mystery. It holds the consciousness of nature's connection to all living things.
You know, these mushrooms, they can heal you, they can feed you, they can kill you.
It's not like a vegetable, and it's not like an animal, but it's somewhere in between.
They support life, they convert life.
As you're walking, there's about 300 miles of fungi under every footstep that you take, and that's all over the world.
The bulk of the organism is growing underground, and it's composed of these long threads called a mycelium.
Almost everyone knows about the computer internet. The mycelium shares the same network design.
It's amazing what we don't know about mushrooms. They really are a frontier of knowledge.
You can filter water. You can create medicinal compounds almost on demand.
They have incredible capacity to make things change very quickly. So I am super hopeful.
The psychedelic members of the mushroom kingdom are fascinating.
I have been a guide for around 350 psilocybin sessions.
The most
glorious part was that it made me feel more comfortable with living because you're not afraid of dying.
We need to have a paradigm shift in our consciousness. What will it take to achieve that?
We can heal the planet. We can build the future. And our world is fantastic.
Fantastic Fungi is a descriptive time-lapse journey about the magical, mysterious, and medicinal world of fungi and their power to heal, sustain, and contribute to the regeneration of life on Earth that began 3.5 billion years ago. Fantastic Fungi was nominated for a Critical Choice Documentary Award for Best Science and Nature Documentary, and as far as what I could see on IMDb and Wikipedia and all that shit, that was the only thing it was nominated for, which is kind of interesting to me. Fantastic Fungi certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes with 100% tomato meter, which is pretty freaking sweet. 23 reviews and an audience score of 94 with over 50 ratings. Directed by Louis Schwartzberg, written by Mark Monroe, produced by Lynn Davis Lear, Louis Schwartzberg, and Elise Louis Stemp. Narrated by Captain Marvel Brie Larson, who I know is Brent's favorite actor in Hollywood right now.
Oh, I mean,
correct?
Sarcastically, the best.
Okay.
Right.
Dripping with the sarcasm of 1,000 years but anyway, she did great in this, in my opinion. That's
agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
she did.
you, Andrew. Thank you, Brent. We streamed this on Netflix. This was a moving art production. So I know we've had the moving art deal on in our home before, that production company where they just kind of take extremely high definition visual images and put it to subtle music, and you're supposed to be able to have it on in the background, so it's pretty sweet. And I could definitely see that in this doc. The visuals were amazing. They were really good. Quick warning before we get into this episode: if you haven't seen it, we may talk about some spoilers, but this is kind of one of those just informational ones, so I don't think you need to see this before listening. Let's talk about why we chose to watch Fantastic Fungi this week. This was kind of a collective decision. Siblings in the room. How did we decide? I'm going to let you guys talk about how we decided, because I had nothing to do with the decision of this, and I think there was a little back and forth, specifically probably between my bird and her big brother Brent over there.
Yes, I communicated through the digital waves of the telephone to Bird.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. We decided that we both like talking about medicine, advancements in medicine, what they're doing, what we could do, especially when it comes to the more natural things that we could do.
For sure.
And this documentary definitely
checked all the boxes.
Checked the boxes.
Yep.
And inspired those thoughts.
Was this your first choice for a documentary?
It was the choice that good old Niki over here proposed, and it was a perfect choice right off the bat.
Yeah, very good. I heard tell that you might be interested in some like the more conspiracy style documentaries, Brent. Would that be true?
That would be definitely true, and I even wrote a conspiracy on my notes here.
You did.
That correlates with this documentary.
Bird, tell us why this is one that appealed to you as opposed to a more conspiratorial one.
I mean, basically, I have always been interested in natural healing, as you know, especially when we know the damage that some pharmaceuticals do and the long-term need and requirements of some of them. So I definitely like to watch things that inspire me and don't give me anxiety like conspiracy documentaries do.
Yeah. Yep. I'm actually really glad that this is one that we decided to watch together. And this, in the run of our show so far, this is the first documentary that we've covered on our show that I was able to sit and watch with the entire crew that I talked about it with. Normally we do it kind of in our own homes or in our own spaces or our own time. So it was fun to watch it with you all and then come back and talk about it. So I think that's a fun thing. So not necessarily the easiest decision to make on what we landed on, but here we are talking about fungicides, fungi, the funnest guys. Andrew, had you seen this before we watched it, or was this the first time you had seen this one?
Definitely first time I've seen it. I haven't even heard of it until this was brought up. And yeah, I was definitely very intrigued by the premise of the whole documentary, just with the healing powers and all that kind of stuff. It was very intriguing. And
what were your sorry, go ahead. Finish.
Oh, it was just definitely a good watch.
Yeah.
Sure.
What were your predictions going into it? Did you have like, hey, Andrew, we're watching Fantastic Fungi. What did you think like you were going to be watching?
I thought it was really going to be more on.
What'd you call me? Call me moron?
No, I think it was going to be more on like.
What'd you call me?
The food side of things, and like how restaurants use mushrooms and just how humans consume mushrooms. And I thought it was going to be more on like how we ingest them as like nutrients,
right?
Versus what it ended up being about, which was the effect that it plays on the planet and how intertwined fungus is with our entire ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that was totally something new. I had no idea that was a thing. And I thought it was going to be more on like how we consume them as a species.
Yeah. I think the thing that surprised me about this, I guess the medicinal properties of the mushrooms, and the fungus wasn't really a surprise to me because I know Niki's talked about it quite a bit, in our house. But I think the part of this documentary that surprised me the most was kind of what you were alluding to was, the mycelium network, the kind of web of communication and connectedness that the fungus communicated underground, and not just with each other, but also with the trees. And they used that network not only to communicate, but to share nutrients and things like that. I thought that was insane.
Definitely. I mean, it reminded me of the movie Avatar.
Yeah.
How everything in that movie, the whole thing was all of the trees, the living beings, the entire planet of Pandora is interconnected. And I really got that same vibe from this.
Yeah.
And I just found that very interesting.
Yeah. Brent.
And even when they mentioned just on that same premise, how connected it is with the planet, and the spokesperson in the documentary talking about you take one step in a forest. Every step you take in a forest, there's 300 feet of mycelium underneath you. That is just mind blowing. I had no idea.
It's an entire world that the layman just walking through it doesn't know is there, and it's so much more intricate than we might have realized. It had. So has anyone here watched Last of Us or played the game?
Yeah, played the game.
Yeah. So it was cool to see the interconnectedness with the virus that they used in that show, in that game. So when you stepped, they used the actual mycelium network to communicate with the other infected. So it was very cool to see that that game actually did its research on some stuff maybe they watched this documentary. Who knows? So let's get into some of our favorite or least favorite details about Fantastic Fungi. But first, I'm going to give a quick and decaying synopsis for this documentary. This will be even quicker than most of them because it's pretty, self-explanatory. There's really no way to wrap it up besides there's a lot of mushrooms and they're really cool looking and they do a lot for our planet. But so imagine an organism that feeds you, heals you, reveals nature's mysteries, and could help save the planet today. And it's right under your feet. Fantastic Fungi, with the subtitle The Mushroom Movie, combines beautiful time-lapse cinematography, absolutely stunning CGI, and an overview of the biology, environmental roles, and various uses of fungi. Visual affectations aside, Fantastic Fungi is an engaging look at the scope of an organism that is so much more than a pizza topping or an ingredient in beef stroganoff or a disgusting little booger that's in some kind of a can that makes me gag thinking about eating them shits. With spectacular footage of growth and decay and impassioned speeches about magic of mushrooms, this documentary is a treat for the eyes and the ear. Do you guys agree?
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Totally.
Agreed. So standout moments. Bird, let's start with you. What stood out first and foremost to you? What was one of your favorite or least favorite parts of this documentary?
So you already know I'm kind of a brain junkie, and if I won the lottery, I would just spend my life researching the brain. So
Yeah.
the part that I like the most is how the mycelium is extremely similar to our brain with the electrical impulses and electrolytes even, and the way that it communicates and neurons firing, and basically how that correlates to how it heals our brain.
Yep.
The way it helps to rewire our brain. So I really like those correlations between nature and our brains, and how certain vegetables out there, certain parts of the earth tend to mimic what the insides of our body look like or how they work.
Yeah.
So I really nerded out on that.
Yeah, and not to get too absolutely trippy, disclaimer, at least I'm speaking for myself, I am not high on psilocybin right now. I know I mentioned that we all are, but I can't speak to the others because I was not with them all day. But I am not high right now. But I do, to get a little trippy and to speak on what you said, it kind of shows a little bit of evidence, in my opinion, in the uneducated mind, that there may be maybe a little evidence to the evolutionary theory and because if nature is doing the same things that our brains are doing, and that connectedness in that network and the creating of neural pathways and all that, and they even showed how similar that is to that of the fungal kingdom, I guess. To me, that's like, okay, you're not that similar without having come from the same place. So maybe we're all just walking, talking mushrooms, and I don't know.
And also that the further we seem to be getting from nature, the sicker we're getting. So the interconnectedness and similarity of humans and nature, I think, is just another thing to touch on, and that made my brain just start taking away hearing about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was that part when they were talking about the experiment on the trash. And that was what really kind of blew me away, that, they do this experiment and they're just using our current methods for breaking down trash and covering it with tarps. And then they use the other experiment with putting the mushroom and fungus, properties and the spores on that trash for the same amount of time. They come back teeming with life. Birds are coming down to get the little worms. It didn't smell. It was actually able to break down the oils and heal naturally. It could have been, if they left it there long enough, you would never even have known it was trash.
Right. Being able to use these properties, which are completely natural and found in our natural world, to break down a absolutely horrifying thing that we have done to our planet with these non-biodegradable waste. And I think they even talked about in the piece that you were discussing that was like there was some diesel waste in there, fossil fuels, things like that, and where everything else turned into a stinking pile of uselessness and decay. Well, not even decay, just
goo, sludge.
This turned into having its own ecosystem to where animals came and bugs and mushrooms and all that. So I agree. That was definitely a standout in my mind. How about you, sir, Andrew?
So kind of like what Niki or Bird was touching on, with just how interconnected, I just didn't really realize how interconnected we were. And like you said, how disconnected we are from nature, and the further we get away from nature, the sicker we get as a species. I mean, look at all of the illnesses that just were not around. But then you look at, just with the way that they were talking about how this fungus, all of this fungus is like the digestive system of nature.
Yeah.
But not only that, it's also the building blocks of life. And that's what was like really trippy. And to touch, I am also not high on psilocybin
Neither
as
am
well.
I.
I'm not saying I've never been, but at the moment, no. But I just find that sort of thing very interesting. And just how basically fungus works much like a human body. Like our bodies are built to digest, reuse, turn things into fuel. We take calories. I'm not an expert on that, but our bodies process food and turn it into energy and store fat. And that's exactly what the fungus is doing. They were speaking on that. Like it literally takes the nutrients, stores it underground, like stores it in its, it's just insane that is, like you said, walking through the forest and there's 30 feet of 300 feet of this neural network. Essentially, it's just mind blowing. I had no idea that was just under our feet this entire time.
It's our actual upside down.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's you mentioned that when we were watching. Then they had the cool visuals that sort of flipped to show us what they look like. Which, by the way, the animations in this film were freaking sweet. But it did look something out of Stranger Things.
And the one fungus that they showed that literally looked like the Demogorgon.
That was creepy.
You remember what that one was called?
I don't even know if they said it.
Yeah.
But speaking of mushrooms, which we've been doing for the last 15 minutes, I meant to go into this before we got into this, but whatever, we'll plug it in here now. Before we get any further into it, I did get onto the Fantastic Fungi website, and there is a little quiz on there that will assign everybody a mushroom. Okay, so I went and I took the liberty of, based on the descriptions they had of the different mushrooms and their personalities, so to speak, I went ahead and took the liberty of assigning you guys each a mushroom, and I'm going to do my best to refer to you only by your mushroom name for the remainder of this episode. I will fail, but I'm going to try. Bird, we're going to start with you. You live in your head a lot, which is often full of new ideas and bursts of creativity. You prefer deep conversations over small talk. And like this mushroom, you have a softer side. You're full of wisdom and inspiration. You, my beautiful bird, are the lion's mane.
Knew it. And thank you.
You're welcome. They talked about lion's mane in the documentary about how it can directly affect, and correct me if I'm wrong because you know more about it, but directly affect the neural pathways to help with anxiety and depression and things like that, which is fucking crazy.
And that is a mushroom that's in the mushroom coffee I drink every single morning.
Gross sounding, but I'm sure it's good.
That sounds disgusting.
Breezy, Brent, you are creative and spiritual fuel, my friend. You have ample energy when needed to fulfill the desires of your brain and body. Like this mushroom, you can seem intimidating and elusive, but you're actually quite accessible for those who you let to get close enough. You, my brother-in-law, you are cordyceps.
Cordyceps, it kind of makes sense. And just to throw it out there, I ate mushrooms once many years ago, and it never went away.
And I am still tripping balls
and
to this
day.
day.
They actually talked about that in the documentary.
Yeah, they did. Andrew, just like this mushroom, you are more than you seem, sir. The people closest to you, your inner circle, understand your true purpose, while most only know your highlight reel. Your humility lets you fly under the radar at times, but you're always your most authentic self without scrutiny. You are the shiitake.
Yes.
Yes, the shiitake. The shit take.
The shit.
Perfect that the word shit is in my little brother's mushroom name.
He's the little shiitake.
I mean, that's pretty accurate, though.
Yeah.
I will just go by the shit. For the
shit.
Rest of
All
the
right.
podcast.
So, and for my name, like this mushroom, and you guys correct me if you feel differently about my own description of myself. Like this mushroom, I am a strong supporter of sleep and rest. being that I nap every single freaking day. I'm strong, resilient, versatile, and the people in my life know me as reliable and respected. At least I hope. I am unflappable. I'm an old soul and a natural leader. I am the reishi mushroom. So we've got lion's mane, we've got cordyceps, we've got little shiitake, and reishi.
I'd say you're unflappable.
Definitely unflappable.
We said that at the same time.
I love
What
that.
is unflappable?
I don't know about
Can
the
anybody
strong
answer
part,
that?
though.
Oh, well, I'm odorous. Strong
I've never
odorous.
seen him flap. So, I
Odorous
mean, we're
and-
good there.
So yeah, if
flappable.
you've never seen him flap, then he is unflappable, most likely.
Yep. Okay. So that's us. There was our mushroom counterparts. For me, let's getting back into the documentary itself. To me, this was a visual documentary all day. Although there was a lot of really good information, a lot of good educational stuff, without the visuals, and this would have been a much shorter documentary because they focused on that a lot. The moving art names said it all. The amount of money tied up in the types of camera equipment and filming equipment must have been astronomical because those are some high-end cameras. But they did really get a lot of cool shots of growing mushrooms and then decay. And there was a scene where a mouse was decaying and the thing looked like it was boiling over this time lapse. I have a question for you guys though, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer it. How the hell did they get sound from time lapse? Because I know when those like mushrooms were growing and pushing through, it was like, is it added afterwards? Is that a fucking effect or is that real sound? Anyone know?
Speaking from the limited knowledge I would have on videography, and some people I know that do some video work for their Instagram businesses and stuff like that, I think they're adding that sound afterward. That's my interpretation of that.
info.talkumentary@gmail.com. If anyone out there is a time-lapse videographer and you know how that is done, if it's in post or if it's something like that, shoot us an email or reach out on social media or something like that so that we can answer that question. Andrew, what stood out to you? Talk about some things that stood out to you if you've got anything else.
I mean, what really stood out to me was really the stuff on how some of the effects, like on that lion's mane. I had no idea that this fungus exists, and I personally in my life have struggled with very, very deep depression and really bad anxiety, crippling anxiety. That was about 10 years ago, and I didn't know anything like that existed. And when they were talking about going through when those doctors were working with these people, like basically putting them on a dose of psilocybin, basically making them trip, and then having sensory deprivation, covering their ears, covering their eyes, having them explain the feeling that they were feeling in that moment and how it like helped them through. The one woman, she was sick with cancer, and how it made her feel warm and loved, and like there was just like this light, like this essence, this feeling of another being, it was just so deep.
She
like
went real hippy dippy.
She went really hippie, but I mean, that was an actual feeling that she had. And some people, when you think of getting high on mushrooms, like it's just this trippy thing. It's like you're seeing purple elephants and you're just seeing all this crazy stuff. But I mean, that's not what they were seeing at all. Two separate people basically seeing the same thing. And we might touch on this, but that was just how they both had a very similar experience, being two different people with two different different backgrounds, two different experiences, two different issues. She was struggling with cancer. He had really bad anxiety, and yet they both experienced almost identical visual experiences, seeing almost like a kaleidoscope. They did that a lot in the documentary where they had this kaleidoscope, and that's what they were explaining.
Right.
Well, and then not just the visual, but they also had an extremely similar emotional reaction.
Right.
That feeling of that love. They both kind of described that very similar outcome of like this contentment
Yep.
You know, they're struggling to find the will to feel okay with living. And
Right.
now they have this, you know, very, of course, controlled experience with the sensory deprivation and the microdose of the psilocybin. And here
And
they
a
are
guide.
now having identical results.
Right,
I
yeah.
mean, when we talk about the medicinal purposes, the natural healing, I mean, that's what you're looking for. You take Tylenol to get rid of this headache.
Right.
Everybody has a similar experience. So I look at that as like successful results.
Agreed.
2 people, 2 mental states of mind, same result.
Yeah.
Getting to this contentment of life. That seems like that's what it's for.
Sign me up.
Sign me up for that.
I mean, I'm not a recreational drug user myself, but I'm going, I have, and Niki and I have talked about this several times, but I have no hesitation popping my anxiety pill every morning that who knows what the fuck is in it, when I could, if there was something natural, you know, I know there has to be certain types of like environments for things to grow and whatnot. But if I had this thing growing in my backyard and I knew that it was gonna help me feel better every day, and I knew that I couldn't overdose, I wasn't gonna get the shits or get headaches or get dizzy because of a side effect from it. Fuck yeah, I'm eating that shit.
Yeah.
I don't want to trip out for fun necessarily, but.
And I think that that's kind of, you know, I don't know what tangent we want to go on here, but I think that's what I think needs to be solved with all of this, because you said, I'm not a recreational drug user.
Yeah.
But I think what is wonderful about this documentary and the research that's been done from very credible giant hospital systems such as Johns Hopkins is they're showing that it shouldn't be a recreational drug that people are having to hide to help heal themselves. It should be something that we are able to do and to be given and to have some assisted therapy in across the board in all states, so that it's not something we're hiding to take in order to heal.
But they even talked about, why is it not? If we have so much proof that this helps, and this is so helpful, and it's so natural, and it's so helpful to not only our bodies but our brains and our environment, why is that not more accessible? Well, the plain and simple answer is money. The big pharma does not fucking make money if this is actually helping people and getting them off their drugs.
Right. It's like I take a Prilosec because I have to every single day. You know, is there, you know, there's 1.5 million types of fungus. Over 20,000 of them are mushrooms.
Yeah.
Is there a mushroom that can help that?
Probably.
I mean, we're curing these other things. And just to be on that tangent of the pharmaceutical industry, you know, I think most people could agree, whether you think of conspiracies or not. You told me, or you mentioned that I like the conspiracies.
We're going on a trip here together, my friend.
You know, the reality is that there's no money in cures. The mushrooms are so abundant. There's just no money to make. If I could just take a little, you know, something very natural that I could have in my backyard every day, well, and that I could produce on my own with little to no effort.
Right.
Well, now Prilosec's out of business.
Right. Big pharma goes to the tank, and there went a whole lot of people's fortunes, which fuck them. But you know,
and the documentary mentioned that some of the sessions for major depressive disorder, so people with severe depression, it can basically reverse depression in those people in 1 to 2 treatments of a higher dose of psilocybin. Assisted therapy. So if you can pretty much rid them of it for about 12 months, which is the average time frame according to Johns Hopkins, and also what they quoted in the documentary, then big pharma is not going to make the money if you're not taking their pharmaceutical Prozac every single day of your life for the next 10 years or however long.
And probably the effects of taking a long-term medication like that is also lining the pockets of the next guy who has the business of alleviating the symptoms of the side effects that you and then you're on all these drugs that is paying a lot of people a lot of money, keeping insurance companies in business, keeping pharmaceutical companies in business, keeping hospitals in business, which obviously we want those to stay in business. But if the focus was taken from the pharmaceutical to the more natural. And with these kind of results, I mean, that's better for humanity, but not better for the people making money.
And that's, that's just a really interesting like thought because, Brent is really into conspiracies more than some people, but it really does have you think. I've been a victim of being on a medication for a very, very, very long time. And then finally meeting a doctor who completely was just blown away that I've been taking this medication. It was this medication called propranolol. It was in my early 20s. I have what's called tachycardia, which is just, I have a faster heart rate. It's not deadly. It's not dangerous. It's just my resting heart rate is faster. So they put me on this propranolol, which is designed to slower the heart rate. This was in the midst of playing hockey 4, 5, 6 nights a week sometimes. And then I started feeling really, really crappy and like feeling really tired. And I've been on this propranolol for like 10 years at this time. Jesus. And I go in to see my new doctor and she's just like, what medications are you taking? And I say, oh, propranolol. And she's like, why the fuck? I think she even said, fuck. Why in the fuck are you taking propranolol? That is meant for a sedentary elderly person who has heart issues where they need to keep their heart rate down in a fucking old folks home. And I'm blown away. I've been taking this medication for
20-something-year-old
years.
Male. Yeah.
10 years I'm taking this medication, and she just was like, stop taking that now. So it's like, conspiracy or not, that happened to me. That was a real experience. And that really made me lose faith in just medicine. Really, I believe in medicine. I take 2 freaking antidepressants right now, and I still feel depressed and I still feel anxiety. And just to hear that there's possible
and the
solutions
and the idea that there, on this show, we've talked about different things from the criminal, and this is a little side tangent, but the criminalization, the intentional criminalization of things like, just race, for example. And, this could very well, they talked about the quote unquote, escaping the lab of psychedelic mushrooms, magic mushrooms, and how it turned into this craze in the 60s and 70s and how it kind of demonized it in a way. I'm not generally, Brent, I'm not really a conspiracy theorist myself, but it's hard to look at that and go, well, there probably was something, because even today, me sitting here right now in this basement, because of the indoctrination that I've gotten throughout my life, when I hear you could take a psychedelic mushroom in order to heal these things, my initial reaction is to go, yeah, but I don't do drugs. Yeah, the fuck I do. I take one every day. But so I'm calling my own bullshit on that. But like, I don't know. There I can just feel that there's an indoctrination or I guess that's the right word. A
negative stigma.
Yes, a stigma that is hard to shake.
And what's the difference between this drug and that drug?
Right.
And why is this like, on the more conspiracy side of things, like why isn't this being more talked about? Why is this the first time watching this documentary that I'm hearing about lion's mane being a potential cure for depression and like the healing powers and how this affects the people's brains like almost permanently? Like they were talking about 2-3 sessions max, and the one doctor talking about, literally he's fucking talking about that, talking about taking the time of taking a medication for the rest of your life, like I'm doing now. I've been on citalopram for 15 years. And it's like, if I stop taking that for 1 day, I am like, my brain feels foggy. I feel really fucking weird. And it's so odd that, and now there's potential that we could have a medication or a drug out there where I take fucking 2 or 3 of these pills and it re-hardwires my brain. Imagine
permanently.
Yeah. And imagine if that's out there, they're not going to allow that to be.
Hell no.
They're not going to allow that to be.
Well, it's just like the speaker's mom, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think they mentioned the number of doses, but obviously she's not taking them anymore because she had breast cancer and now she doesn't have breast cancer.
Right. What the fuck?
And here we are dumping all this money into cancer research.
Yeah.
And that's the leading, one of the leading things that's being funded is cancer research. And yet here we have these researchers that have
essentially found a cure,
basically evidence.
Right.
We have, here she is,
right,
breast cancer one day, and now she does these treatments with just mushrooms.
And I think we can all sit here and say that if Big Pharma wants to slap a price on psilocybin, we'd all be willing to pay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'd rather pay for that
right,
than your treatment that sucks.
Right. Yeah. And yes.
Give us a cost. Name a cost. But we would rather have something that works for that cost.
From the time we were children and going, I hope someday they find a cure for cancer. Well, the reality as growing up and learning about conspiracies and watching things like this, and you'd say, if they found a cure for cancer, they'd lock that shit up so goddamn tight and never let anyone have access to it because they'd stop making money, right? Big capital T, the people out there that are making the money and the decisions and the lobbyists and the politicians and all this that have a dog in that fight and who would lose their legacy, quote unquote, and their fortunes if they did create a cure. I guarantee that, in somewhere in this world, there's a vault or a bunch that have these fucking cures that are never going to see the light of day because they would bankrupt these major corporations, and they're not going to let that
hurt the economy technically.
Yeah, for sure.
But guess what? On human life, technically.
But guess what? People would be healthier and happier. So fuck them. Burn it to the ground. I don't care. Anyway. One of the things that I thought was crazy, and we actually started talking about some of these characters in the film, was the people who did submit to the guided and controlled psilocybin trips in order, the people that were at Johns Hopkins, because they had what do they call them? Diseases or whatever it was, or cancers that were going to essentially end their life. And one thing that we had talked about being a little bit strange was we kept waiting for them to say this had cured them or this had helped their cancer or something. And a little bit of a shock was they didn't really do that. They basically said, no, now I'm just more okay with dying as opposed to I got better. It's this made me more okay with not getting better, which is very beneficial, I would think. But it was also to me kind of like, oh, God, that feels dark as shit because like
they really spun it like we're going to present to you this.
Yeah.
They're healed. Yeah. And it's like,
what it reminds me of?
Content.
Yeah. Content.
Which is still great, but.
Yeah. What it reminds me of is religion. Somebody who is, and we can go down that path, but I mean, that's what it really felt like. That's what they were explaining. When you talk to somebody who is really, really religious and believes in God and heaven and all of that, and they, there's been stories where people die and come back and they explain like they felt loved and they saw this light and they're seeing that same thing. So was that what they were experiencing? And maybe we're just tapping into, because that was referenced in this documentary as it's something that we're like tapping into the neural network of this fungus. Like we came from fungus. We came from the same single cell organism. When it split off, there was fungus and what became human life, and we are from the same molecule. And so when we die, we are now tapped back into that same neural network that is this fungus, like Avatar.
The microverse.
The microverse. Like that is just, that's so trippy. That was the trippiest part of the whole thing is
the trippiest part of a trippy documentary. Bird, what else you got over there on your endless notes?
Oh,
Anything you want to get into?
I mean, I I guess like along the vein of what they were just talking about is if we're talking about how the documentary, some of the different parts we liked and disliked, and you kind of mentioned how they kind of botched giving the results of certain things. But you know, with a lot of research that I've been reading about since we watched it, there are many different types of mushrooms that are healing, that do show anti-cancer properties, anti-dementia properties, Alzheimer's, anxiety, depression, all of that. So it would have been nice if they would have included those results because it is founded research out there. So it would have been nice if they would have included that.
Agreed. I think that there could have been a lot of benefit in showing some of the statistics and things. This, like I said early on, this was a very visually, this was an eye massaging documentary, you know, that I agree some educational aspects and some statistics would have been very helpful to push this, I guess, agenda forward.
Same thing. I mean, I was looking for kind of specificity that got there almost in some cases, but then they really just kind of left it hanging. They started talking about the use of like biopesticides. And then they just kind of mentioned it as simply as I am now. And basically left it behind. They started talking about this mushroom of immortality that has been around for now 3,000 years on top of some mountain. And as long as it has food, it's going to live forever. And yet they didn't really expand on that, but they kind of went off on this segue to when we mentioned earlier about, you know, the mushrooms left the lab and we get on this little, we see a visual of now Woodstock after just seeing this beautiful 4K mushroom growing.
Now
and then we just see
vintage
people
Woodstock.
at Woodstock footage. So I thought that was a little weird. And I really wish that we would have had some more specificity on the lion's mane and cordyceps. And I wish they would have trusted the audience that, hey, we're smart enough to learn these words. Tell us some more specifics about these things, because I want to hear about these biopesticides. I mean, that's crazy.
Speaking of biopesticides, we didn't really talk about the kind of the main character of this, which was a guy named
I was just waiting because of how goofy he was.
Paul Stamets. He's an ex-logger who became a mushroom enthusiast. He's now one of the most credited mycologists in the world, from what I could tell. For several innovations and breakthroughs in the science of fungi. We talked a lot about how it's impressive because this gentleman was a non-college educated scientist, essentially mycologist, that is doing these insane breakthroughs in scientific research and things like that, and he never went to school for it, which is fucking crazy. He invented a Trojan horse style pest control system, which was so cool to see in their animations, where the little termite who normally would have been stopped at the door by other little termite guards, but he found a way to time delay the fungus, the growth. Thank you, but until that termite got into the nest and was able to infect, quote unquote, the entire thing. And that's done without the use of harsh chemicals.
Yes.
It's insane. It's really cool. Plus he also wore a really cool little mushroom hat every time that he went to like a TED talk or something like that. It was so nerdy, but it's like, hey, that's kind of fun, I guess.
I mean, he just was a guy who fell in love with mushrooms. And I don't even think we touched on the part where he grew up when he was a kid. He had a very, very bad stutter, and he ended up, I don't even think he brought up where he came upon this bag of mushrooms is what he said. But he just magically had this bag of mushrooms. He took the entire bag, and you're supposed to put a couple on a piece of pizza, not eat the entire bag. Everybody knows that.
I didn't know what the right dosage was, so I just took the whole bag. I figured that was a dose. Bullshit, dude. You knew that the full bag was going to be a lot. But
he got he had such an experience. And he like I think he said this. He was like, I told myself 100 times, hundreds of times, thousands of times, stop stuttering, stop stuttering, stop stuttering. And it like hardwired his brain somehow, because the next day he had a story about seeing a woman that he was like really attracted to, and he was always looking down. And this was, just his story, and literally the following day his stutter was gone.
Right.
And how do you explain that?
Right.
How is that explained that he just takes this mushroom, tells himself, basically rewires his brain to stop stuttering?
Yeah.
And that's because psilocybin can penetrate the central nervous system, and it then functions very similar to our brain. And that is why this documentary is amazing to destigmatize and demystify mushrooms.
Well, and they even mentioned that, you know, some of these mushrooms can actually stimulate nerves to regrow.
Yeah.
I mean, for someone like me that has had eye issues and nerve issues in my eye and wear glasses, I mean, are you telling me that there's a potential way to synthesize some of these mushrooms and just regrow these nerves?
And to do it without surgery and without like intense chemicals or medicines and things like that.
And then maybe end up hugging and kissing a tree after. I mean, it sounds like a really good time.
The dude fucked the tree.
He definitely did.
Okay. So anyway, all right. So, and to touch on what Lion's Mane and Cordyceps over here, we're talking about the psychedelic mushrooms. The piece of this that maybe stood out the most to me was when they said there are receptors in the human brain that exactly fit what psilocybin provides when you take it. It's like having a specific puzzle piece in your brain that you've never been able to find the other piece to, and this mushroom fits it perfectly. So what he mentioned in there was, so does that mean that we are supposed to be the primates that we are we supposed to be doing this in order to give our brain the full capacity that it's supposed to have? And how much further along would human evolution be if we had been taking these things as part of our normal diet and our normal routines?
Well, right. And that's one thing they kind of touch on, and this gets into a little bit of the conspiracy of life.
Of course,
but they
cordyceps.
actually do mention, and I was really happy to hear this. This is cordyceps coming at you.
Coming at you live with cordyceps.
Very, very creative. I thought it was really cool to hear some validity behind the idea that the more nomadic version of the primates that we are, that there is a possibility that, okay, we're roaming the earth and then we eat this mushroom, this kind of puzzle piece in the ecosystem that expanded their minds and gave them sort of that edge, because they even mentioned that, you know, we study this evolution, we know these certain we know kind of like certain milestones and how long things take. And then there's just this few million years where it seems to just jump.
It jumped, right.
Really, really quick. And it's a bit of a stretch, but it makes sense.
It stands to reason that it could be something like this because they existed. Why wouldn't the Neanderthal or whatever, I'm not, whatever.
They didn't have language to perverse it.
Right. Yeah. And they didn't have media to fuck it up. And, but also no one to tell them that it's disgusting that you're eating a shit mushroom. Because that's where they said they probably found them, was on the droppings of the buffalo and things like that, which is freaking disgusting. But hey, you know what? But to also think that could be what stimulated their brain, even if it was stimulating it into a psychedelic trip, quote unquote, but then gave them the idea that, hey, man, we could start a language that would help us talk to each other. They're like, fuck, man, talk to each other. That's insane. But it sparked that idea, right? That's human evolution.
Unlock that cognitive.
Yeah.
That kind of woke them up.
That's crazy.
And that would explain
little shiitake. Go ahead.
Little shiitake coming
little
at you.
Shit.
Little shit.
But that would explain. I mean, that would actually be a really good explanation. One of the biggest questions when people talk about evolution and how we derive from apes is like nothing else in nature still exists from what it evolved from.
Right.
But if you think about if a group of Neanderthals, they were all exactly the same, all exactly the same level of the evolutionary cycle. And this group over here is the one who found these magic mushrooms. And so they evolved into what we are today. But these over here did not, because they did not find these mushrooms. And that would be why we still have apes today.
Right.
Like that is crazy.
Right.
But that is like a lot of times in nature, the most logical thing, like Dr. Spock would say from Star Trek, you know, the most logical thing is typically the correct answer. It's the most logical. I mean, that does make sense.
Occam's razor, right?
Occam's razor. Yeah. Like
that's
crazy.
That was a trip, bro.
And there was a nice visual of the Neanderthal literally picking the mushroom from the shit and putting it in his mouth. And that was,
I mean, that was live footage from evolution.
Oh, wow. Where did they get that?
gosh.
That's cool.
They had cameras back
They
then.
were
That's
so
how they got that
evolved. They
shot.
must have really had a lot of magic mushrooms.
Yeah, there was more
whole goddamn
technology
bag.
back then than you knew. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Anything else we feel like we skipped over before we keep going?
I mean, are we talking about anything that we were like, eh?
Yeah. So, I think that
how it ended for 30 minutes.
Yeah. So that was going to be my the only thing that I mentioned as far this this documentary that I didn't really that I thought was a little
awkward.
Yeah, awkward, and it seemed like it was unusual for the type of documentary that it was. I felt like you could have done better than that. And that is, I felt like it was setting up the end of the documentary for the last 45 minutes of the documentary. It just never ended. It felt like, the way the music came in, the way it was filmed, the way they had these little catchy quotes about changing the world with the power of turkey tails.
And the same visuals from earlier.
Yeah.
Being reused.
Repeating visuals. Thank you. And, but then they went back into the story of how his mom got cured. And then they went back into this is the power of the mushroom and what it can do for our planet.
Orgasm.
Yeah. And then back into the I'm going there. I think there was 5 different points where I could have pointed like it's about to be done and we're back into this. So that was a little bit annoying, but the other thing that I didn't realize this until after we finished watching it and I started doing my notes for this episode. The other thing that felt a little bit kind of shitty, I guess, to me was after I watched it and I went to the website. I looked up Fantastic Fungi documentary. And the very first website is the website for the documentary, which also happens to be the website that you can go buy a whole bunch of these mushroom products. And it's literally an online store for this guy's. And I think, maybe I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure this was the same company that the mushroom hat guy owns and runs. So after that, I felt like, God damn it, this was a really well-made commercial because they wanted you to look into this, go, where can I, when we were watching, I remember whether it was me or one of you guys saying something along the lines of, where do I get that shit? Well, it's hard for me to believe that they didn't intend for you to say, where do I get that shit? Look up that documentary and then go, oh, conveniently, I can get this on the website.
Online. Yeah.
Okay. So, it's kind of like, it felt like, oh, damn it. Some of the unanswered questions were wanting to push units, in my opinion. So, that kind of put a little bit of a bad taste, not enough to make me dislike the documentary or to think that the information was any less relevant. But it was just like, God damn it. Is true information giving and artistry out the window because you want now to sell your products, which the other side of me goes, I'm glad you're having this available and giving us the access to these products that could be life-changing for some people. So anyway, any thoughts on that?
Perhaps they were just trying to be as, sensitive as they could to the sales process.
Yeah.
With that. But yeah, I mean, I definitely felt that too, because he even says, well, I'm not a businessman. I just have a business with 300 employees and a huge building.
Yeah. Yeah.
All these products, but I'm not a businessman.
Yeah.
But I mean, one could definitely say with most documentaries that there is a motive or a
bias. Maybe
bias isn't the word I'm looking for, but that there is a purpose behind the documentary, no matter what it's about.
An agenda, maybe?
An agenda, that's probably the word I'm looking for. And so, I mean, I'm okay with the agenda being
something good.
I want to educate you on this, and then I want to make it available to you.
Right.
If you're leaving your customer or your watchers wondering what to do next, then you have only done half of what's needed for the people watching. You've given them the information, but not a path to get there.
Yeah. And that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And I think there has been documentaries that we watched for this show that you walk away going, okay, but now what? Like when we watched Fed Up, for example, like there's all this information about the food we eat and the sugars we consume and how addictive they are and all this. And then it's kind of like, good luck, motherfucker. You know, like
the documentaries that give you anxiety.
Yeah. So that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
My little lion's mane over there.
Yeah.
Little shit. Go ahead.
Yeah. Little shit. No, it's the shit.
Oh,
we
the
discussed this.
shiitake.
Yeah.
Okay.
The shit. No, just the shit.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know about that website. But you know, I think kind of it's a little frustrating hearing that because you want and you hope that people are genuine. But I do, on the other hand of that, I do feel if they were really trying to push that, I feel like that would have been at the end or something like, hey, go to our website. And then it was something like that, but they didn't do that. So
yeah,
I feel like you found that because you were interested in more information and maybe they didn't want to push that so they didn't come off like that. I mean, we'll never know obviously what their secondary agenda was, but
that's a good point though, because that's just, that reinforces what Bird just said. You know, it wasn't thrown in my face at the end of that, like, to find out more, come see at my website because we'll sell you all kinds of shit that you don't need. No, it was like you just said, and to underline that, it took me going and researching it, and it was easily available because of watching it. It wasn't so I'm kind of, thank you both, because you're kind of helping me to review that. And
not to be overly broad, but you know, the documentary being on Netflix, you know, Netflix being a company that is about, you know, the content they put out is they're not trying to hold that content back from us. And that kind of makes me feel like, okay, maybe there's, you know, it's something good at heart behind it. Like, hey, we don't want to hold back content because this content is, when you think about how criminalized mushrooms are, and psilocybin is, and for them to release a documentary that just allows for that language and that dialogue to be said without censorship,
right,
in that general sense, you know, I like that they can show his business without him going to jail. I mean, you're talking about potential probable cause.
Right,
and yet it's not, and they're fighting for that decriminalization of that word and that product.
And I will say,
the fact that they're allowing that on there.
And I will say that I don't know that psilocybin itself is available on its website. I think
it is not.
Okay,
I checked.
Okay, thank you. I was going to say,
she's not on mushrooms, but she
lion's mane, turkey tail, the ones that are not psychedelic. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, but you know, so sort of continuing on that, you know, what I did really like is how they didn't just, the whole thing wasn't about talking shit on big pharma, and there wasn't really, they didn't really talk about that. Like there was definitely openings for that. And like, I think that's good. It's like, there's already enough division. There's already enough back and forth and this side, and these people are wrong and these people are evil and these people suck. Like it's already enough of that shit. And so it's kind of nice. It's like I feel like he was really genuine. I feel like it's just some genuine information.
If you're looking for it.
Like this is how it helped me. This is how it's helped other people.
Yeah. And I feel like they were really professional when they, just to bank off that, really professional in how they represented the, you know, they just mentioned the criminalization. They said, here's the years it happened. Here's the year when we were able to start, you know, doing research again. They just gave that this is what happened. And so that just shows that, you know, there isn't this agenda pushing. They're not trying to silence what happened. They just said, this is what happened, and we're super excited to be back at it. And that just kind of creates a certain credibility that we don't see a lot.
Yeah,
if you're looking at it from the media
less
perspective.
bashing.
So I really liked that part.
Yeah, I agreed. I agree 100%. So as we get into the next portion of the documentary, which is our ratings and things like that, I do want to ask, if you're comfortable sharing, have any of you experienced psychedelic mushrooms? I know we've kind of talked about that. Andrew?
Yes.
Little shit. Let's start with little shit.
Yes, a number of times.
What was your experience like? DJ, cue the trippy music. Go.
My experience was more, it was not like this glorious, it was the more trippy kind. I thought we were getting invaded by ice cream cone, weapon wielding cows from space.
Yeah.
And it was fucking trippy. I mean, I was convinced, I mean, we were getting invaded by these literally like almost like lightsaber, but they were like 7-stack, 8-stack ice cream cones.
That's fucking
and it was fucking scary. I was just laying there and it was fucking wild. That was probably the most memorable one. I only took the like mushrooms a couple times, and I think it was like second or third, it was just terrible.
Yeah.
I don't really remember. It was just very, very bad. And I just decided never to take them again at that point. But that was in my 19, 20 maybe.
Yeah. How about you, cordyceps?
Yes, many cordyceps.
Yeah.
Many cordyceps. No, did have a number of experiences, kind of the same thing. Ate them a few times. I actually had a few really, really good experiences before I had a really bad one that turned me away.
Yeah.
A few of the really good experiences was being outside in nature. And while he was having a very specific kind of visual experience, everybody experiences a little different. Mine was a little bit more on the mental and emotional side, but you could really feel, and a lot of people would have this similar experience of just kind of the trees and the grass and the gravel and around kind of breathing on you, and kind of just spending time in reflection,
absorbing that. Yeah.
And kind of felt like I was processing thoughts that I should have been thinking about decisions I would make.
Yeah.
And I would just sit there and contemplate for hours on end on the most basic thing, like, should I have eaten that chip?
Or the anthill?
Yeah. Should I have went to this anthill? Should I have left it behind? So it became a very philosophical, very just deep thinking over the most mindless of things.
And in hearing you talk about that, it's funny because, to think of somebody going on a wild trip like that's hilarious, but it's hard to hear that and not think you probably were opening up a side of your brain that could be very fucking useful.
Maybe you were tapping into.
I felt very connected to that anthill.
Yeah.
You were tapping in. I remember that story. Like you guys were just standing, like staring down at this anthill, just feeling like you were an ant crawling into the anthill. It's like maybe that's what that was. You were tapped
these
in.
ants.
Yeah, you were tapped in.
We were just very, very happy that we were there with them. We didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
Thinking about the metamorphosis of life while sitting there staring down at this little tiny anthill. We thought it was huge. I imagine in retrospect, it was probably just a speck of dust. There was probably no ants.
Yep. Bird, any experiences?
No.
Okay, me neither. All right, we ready to go into ratings, everybody?
Yes.
Rating time. So normally we talk about how we feel and all that after watching it. I don't really think we need to get into that because we've been talking about our feelings and how those have been amplified from the mushrooms we all ate. Finally, we've come to the part of our show where we need to rate the documentary with the official Talkumentary rating. Each crew member scores the documentary on a scale of 1 to 10 items, with 1 being as bad as Big Pharma not accepting the mycological treatments to ailments because it doesn't make them any money, and 10 being as magical as a perfectly guided micro trip. The item that we used for scoring changes every week, depending on the documentary. And this week we have chosen sporgasms. I don't remember what in the film he mentioned sporgasm, and I don't.
It's when the guy
why.
was doing the farming with the lady, and they were in the little
Oh,
field.
yeah.
Sporgasm.
When
they
he
were
was
working in
flirting with
the field.
when he was flirting with
He
the
was
other.
flirting with her.
It's so gross, but it's a fun word.
They cut the camera away.
Yeah. I'm going to sporgasm.
Yeah,
Okay.
vicious, brutal fungus sex.
Let's start with lion's mane over there. How many sporgasms?
8 sporgasms.
8 sporgasms. You want to talk about why you scored at that at all, or?
Probably everything I already said. I just really like all the information. I like natural healing options. I think humans need to return to nature, and think medicine has its place, but I love something that gives us options and research, credible research, to help heal other ways that doesn't also harm our body at the same time.
Very good. Our cat Finley just jumped onto little Shitaki's lap, and he's over there rubbing her face on the microphone. So if you heard that, that's what that was. But on that note, little shit, little Shitaki, how many sporgasms, sir?
So I'm going to give it a 7.
Okay. 7 sporgasms?
7 sporgasms. All up in you.
Care to elaborate on that at all? Or
I mean, overall, I really, really enjoyed it. I do think, like we sort of touched on.
Could you stop her from doing that?
Okay, let's get you off there, little girl. Sorry. I never want to kick a cat off my lap. That is just against the law.
Oh, yeah, it is.
So sad.
She cried.
So yeah, overall, I really, really enjoyed the documentary. I do feel like, like the, what really, it was just that 30-minute ending. Like, I feel like that was just, it was just a little repetitive there at the end. Like there was just a lot of repeating what was already said, like, you know, just the double back, like the same animations. And it was like, okay, I think we're good.
Yep.
Like, let's end it.
Yep.
But overall, I mean, I did love it, but for that reason. And then I did think, like, part of me, Brie Larson, was the like narrator, and overall, I mean, that was like a cool like idea where they basically, she was the mushrooms, or she was the fungus. But I just don't think it was executed like I think they were hoping it would be. And I thought she was
the
just
star power behind the doc, and it was unnecessary.
If it was her, and maybe that Attenbach or whatever his name is,
David Attenborough.
David Attenborough. There we go, man. If it was David Attenborough, 100%.
Yeah.
That'd be a 10 out of 10.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I think she did a great job for what it was, but it was probably the most unnecessary part of the documentary. Cordyceps, Brent.
Cordyceps. So I give it an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
I'm going to keep my feelings to myself.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, you're
I kind of feel the same thing about Brie Larson. You said right at the very beginning, I didn't like her. Totally true for anyone listening. Do not like her at all. I thought she did a good job. I thought it made it a little hokey. One of the reasons I gave it the 8 out of 10 is I just, you know, I'm all for wanting the message to get sent strategically. You know, what their goal is divine, right? What we heard and what these can do. And what I'm looking for in a documentary, and just from how we start to communicate better as people with these things, is being more calculated, being more specific. Get the hokey pokey stuff out of there.
Yeah.
Get Brie Larson pretending to be a mushroom out of there. Totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't need to see clips of Woodstock or whatever they were showing.
Yeah.
Because not because I don't want to see it, but because I understand there's a strategy that you should be trying to have that's now missing, because somebody that you might be trying to reach is now going to be disenchanted and think, oh, this is all goofy.
Right.
So you almost like shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
a little bit.
When it comes to, you know, the filming of a documentary versus the filming of a mega blockbuster movie or something, you know, I think some of the, you try to fill the time gap, and unfortunately sometimes it's not as well executed as, you know, for a major like Marvel movie or something where you've got all the money in the world and all the people involved, and you know, you're trying to fit it into this certain amount of time, and so every scene is completely, you know, relevant and to the storyline and all that. Well, with a documentary, you don't necessarily have those same kind of constraints. And if you're trying to fit it into a certain time frame and you don't have enough to do that, just make a shorter documentary. I can promise you no one in this room would have cared if that was a 45-minute documentary as opposed to what it was.
Packed hour and a half, I think.
Yeah.
It's an hour and a half. That's
Yeah.
long.
I would have been perfectly okay with that and still gotten the same thing out of it. For those reasons, me, Captain Rishi over here, I gave it a 6. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more because I got to sit and watch it with all of you. I do think that that's a piece that sometimes gets lost in the film watching experience, especially with like, if I'm watching it down here by myself, I might not get the same out of it as if I'm watching it with a group of people that I like to watch films with, right? But with that being said, I am in complete agreement with you guys. I think it fell short just a little bit on am I just a visual documentary to show you how cool all this stuff looks, or am I an educational one? And I feel like those clashed against each other just a little bit, but not to take anything away from the documentary itself, because it was really good. So with my 6, Cordyceps gave it 8. Mr. Little Shiitake over there gave a 7, and the lovely Lion's Mane gave it 8. So that means our official documentary rating for Fantastic Fungi is 7.25 sporgasms. Brent, Andrew, thank you guys for joining us this week. Bird, I love having you down here. Thank you for being down here.
You're welcome.
I want you all to know that if I ever did decide to eat an entire bag of magic mushrooms and just take it straight to the dome, I hope you're all up in that tree with me. Make me keep my clothes on, please. Okay?
No promises.
Damn it.
You're going to do
making
unnatural
out
things to
with
that tree.
Next week on Talkumentary, we're going to be celebrating our nation's Independence Day. Woo-wee. So in celebration of America,
fuck yeah.
We're going to be watching a 1 hour and 27-minute documentary called Hillbilly. This film examines the iconic hillbilly image in media and culture. I happen to know that we have a very special guest joining us for that. Someone who embraces the hillbilly image and does it with pride and aggression, ruthless aggression. We will be joined next week by one half of the current Pro Wrestling Phoenix tag team champions, professional wrestler Moonshine Russell will be joining us. So make sure you check us out. That's going to be a lot of fun. He will have his flask of moonshine with him. He did promise me that. So have any of you guys seen or heard of Hillbilly?
No.
Nope. I don't know about hillbillies other than they use rope for belts. That's what I know about hillbillies.
You are a wealth of knowledge, my friend. Any predictions about what that one's going to be like?
A lot of people wearing ropes for belts.
Okay, fair enough. I think it's going to be eye-opening because I have seen the trailer. I haven't watched the documentary yet. I do know that this is a culture that is stereotyped often to be a certain, maybe
they wear ropes for belts.
Right, that's a stereotype. To maybe have a mental capacity that is not on par with the rest, and I think that's probably false, and I think that's probably what the documentary is going to try to show. So that's my predictions for that, but we'll see. Please go out and check out the documentary Hillbilly before next week's episode. It can be streamed on Tubi, so you'll watch some ads, but we can deal with that because it's free, right? Join us as we tape together a whole bunch of really big fireworks, set up a lawn chair in the middle of the street, and we try to hold on to all of our fingers and toesies as we celebrate our country's independence, one documentary at a time. Also, please go out, rate and review our podcast on your favorite podcast streaming service and let us know what you think of our show. If you want to connect with us, look for @Talkumentary Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or email us, like I mentioned earlier, at info.talkumentary@gmail.com. Bird, Brent, Andrew, the Lundin kids, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Baba.
Babe.
Baba.
Thanks, Daddy.
Baba, stop.
Say that again.
Nope.
Call me Daddy.
One time.
Call me Daddy. On behalf of Bird, Brent, Andrew, or should I say Lion's Mane, Little Shiitake, and Mr. Cordyceps, I am Captain Reishi, or Jeff Kolaski. I am your host. Thank you all for joining us. I want to thank you for listening. I hope you keep your minds open and maybe so open that you fill up those receptors with psilocybin and just really listen to this whole episode and get everything you can out of it. And maybe we'll start doing some ASMR or something. Keep your minds open. Be kind to one another. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye. I want to punch you in the face.